The first Glacier 1 AIO was impressive. I mean, and now we have the V2, and it has the same amazing T30 fans, but this time with a Gen 8 Asetek pump. Is this a match made of heaven? Match made of heaven? Match made in heaven? We're gonna find out. Okay, so let me catch you up if you haven't heard of the T30 fans from Phanteks. These are a bigger 120mm fan, and by bigger I mean they're thicker airflow fans that rival Noctua, which is kind of the main name in quality fans. They physically have a switch on them that allows them up to 3 modes, which are hybrid, performance, and advanced, with advanced allowing up to 3,000 RPM. And they are, to say the least, dang good fans. But why are we talking about the fans, Robey? I mean, we're supposed to be talking about an AIO here. Because more than you know, a lot of what really does make an AIO good or bad is the fans you put on it. Sure, they may change things like glycol water mixtures or liquid amount or different pump tech, but the thing that actually cools the liquid going through the AIO is the fans. So I always sweat a little bit or cringe a little bit when people are putting like QL120s on really good AIOs. In fact, watch my video on Do Fans Matter right here, because surprise, they really do, and by a lot. Okay, so we covered the fans a little bit, but let's get the basics down for the new Glacier 1 T30 V2. It comes in a 360mm and 240mm version. The 240mm version is $189.99 versus the 360mm version, which is $259.99. Now, when you compare this against other non-screen AIOs, non-LED, LCD screen AIOs in the market, this one is pricey. When you can get like an LT720 for $149.99 or even the Nucleus from EK for $189.99 for the 360mm versions, this is quite expensive. Now, when you look at this from a cost perspective, and we're gonna look on Amazon, when you're taking the fans alone, they're 30 bucks a piece, taking $90 off of the total cost of the fan. So that's bringing the $259.99 down to about $170. But if you do the cost comparison for like a single FK120 fan, which is the ones that would be in the LT720, it's about $20. So that means it's about $60 off. 90 doesn't quite make it all the way down in price. Now this Glacier 1 does still have the same infinity mirror design as the original version. However, it's not the plate that you put on top of it, it's now part of the housing. And you'll also notice that the tubes have moved from the top of the housing instead of being on the side. Now, given that this is an Asetek Gen 8 pump and an Asetek cooler, that actually means it has the new unique retention kit that works for both AMD and Intel. So one kit and both platforms are supported. Now, we aren't gonna cover the installation on this one like we typically do. Again, we got a lot of feedback and we were looking at the overall whether people watched it. So if you wanna see how that works, check out our review on the Ryu 3 right here, because it actually will show you how to do the installation for this as well. Now, if you have a lot of feedback and say, Robey, put it back in, let us know down in the comments below. And you need to be vocal, because looking at what you guys watch, you guys mostly just care about how well it does. And don't worry, we'll get there. The other thing too is this does have sleeved rubber tubes, and in the middle we still have that Gen 8 pump 3-phase motor that can do 800 to 2600 RPM, just like the Asus Ryu 3 with the same plus to minus 300 RPM variants. For support, you've got Intel, you've got LGA 1700, LGA 1200, and LGA 115X. On AMD, you've got AM4 and you've got AM5. Now, unfortunately for your AMD fans, that means no Threadripper. You're not looking at TR4 or anything like that. Okay, so let's just do a quick deep dive on the Phanteks T30s, because this is obviously what Phanteks is banking on, given this is called the Phanteks Glacier 1 360 T30 V2, and this was the first V2 of their Glacier 1 line. For the T30s, they're actually a glass fiber reinforced liquid crystal polymer. Glass fiber reinforced liquid crystal polymer, which means they're well manufactured and are strong and rigid and should last a long time. They are 120 by 120 by 30 or thicker than a standard fan, which is normally about 25mm. And then if you throw like the halos on there, it gets even thicker. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. I talked a little bit about the 3 modes. For hybrid, first one is 1200 RPM for like silent running, and a CFM of 39.1 and a static pressure of 1.27mm H2O. Again, this is not for performance, that's actually pretty low, but again, running very silent. For performance, which you get up to 2000 RPM, it's balancing noise and performance with a CFM of 67 and a 3.3 millimeter H2O for your static pressure. This is kind of a nice sweet spot between the two, and those are actually very, very solid numbers. And then advanced mode, which is 3000 RPM, which is for like your extreme performance and obviously more noise, but a CFM of 101. 101. Honestly, like Josiah, you know you've got like those goldy little locks and stuff like this. This would like blow those around. I don't know, I just think that would be great. So we're gonna get you a pair. And then you have a static pressure of 7.11 mmH2O, which is bonkers high. So again, these are very impressive numbers for sure, and we'll be testing it at 2 of the 3 levels just to see how these translate into actual cooling on the AIO. Okay, so let's get this set up, and what we're gonna do is basically show you the unboxing, show you what's inside of it, get it set up, and then show you the performance and actually how loud it actually is. So let's jump into that. Okay, so let's unbox it. I will have to say the box itself is actually very nice. And look at, I mean, it's got like that iridescent thing on it, which is, I mean, who doesn't like that? This is the T30s 120s that it actually comes with. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the D30s, which are their new fans, but you know, it's not like we're gonna complain about the T30s. So let's pop this open. Ugh. Okay, so pretty plain. There's a couple things I do want to point out as we pop this out there. So let's take a quick look here at the T30s. So I talked a little bit about this, and you guys have seen some B-roll here of these fans as well. So as you can see, they're actually quite a bit thicker. They're much thicker versus the 25 millimeter fans. Again, you got that fiberglass, so it's more like a polymer than anything else. And then right here, you can see it says advanced, performance, and hybrid. And then there's a little switch right there on the bottom. There's a little switch right there on the bottom that allows you to switch between the 3 modes. So we have hybrid, performance, and advanced. There's your 3 fans. Something that is a little bit different than the Ryu at 3, and the main reason I keep bringing up the Ryu 3 is that it is very much, it's Asetek Gen 8 like the Phanteks one. The one thing that they did do different is this backplate for Intel, which I'm gonna use on the test bench. But here's the backplate for Intel, and then it has these, this is the, I mean, it's a really, really nice backplate, super solid, and then you just pop these in. Sometimes these pop off, you can just really snap them back together, and then they snap together really easily. And again, you can move them around and stuff like that. It's pretty squishy, and then this is stickable and removable. Now, one thing I do want to mention, this is super important. You actually get 2 sets of screws. One set of screws is for using and installing the T30s. There is a longer set of screws that are even longer. These longer ones are for when you have the halo lighting that goes on top of the T30s if you wanted to do that. If you don't have the halos and you use these, you will puncture the radiator. So repeat after me, don't use the long screws. Use the shorter long screws, even though that's kind of weird to say. And then this is the other part I was telling you guys about. Here is the special mount for AMD. That what it does is you basically put this on AMD. You're probably seeing a little cut in here from the Ryu video. Well, this goes installs, and then basically now your bracket is spaced to be able to use this like an Intel bracket, which is pretty neat. I don't know why it took so long for them to figure this out. So again, you've got all of this, and then the last thing I always like to point out, which is super neat, are these right here. And these are so you can manage your tubes. So they're little plastic pieces like this. And what they do is you can just clip them on your tubes like so. And then what it does is it keeps the tubes at a good spacing like that. So pretty cool. And it's actually just a nice visual treat for your build. And you get 3 of those as well. So you get your wiring for your stuff. And then of course, here is your new pump and header. So here's the new one. The bottom does come off. It's got magnetic plates here that you can change. I'm sure that people are gonna be able to customize these if they're doing an SI, but unlike the other one, this does not come off. It's all a single housing, unlike the original Phanteks Glacier one. And then you've got your big, massive square plate for your cooling. The last thing that's worth mentioning is that now, like I said, the tubes are actually on the top. On the other one, they were on the side, and you could take off the front and then mount it, and it was really, really thin. This one, it's a nice thick plate now because of that Gen 8 Asetek pump. So just understand, this is a much bigger unit than the other one used to be. So that's all of our stuff. Let's go ahead and get it put together and put it on our bench.
A few minutes later.
Okay, and voila, it is set up. Now, a couple things I just want to mention, and we're going to show this stuff up close here in a bit. But number one, all of the fans daisy chain together. So the actual amount of connections that you need for your motherboard is actually only 3. You have the pump basically going directly to the pump header on your motherboard, You've got all 3 fans plugging into your CPU fan header, and then you've got an RGB to control the RGB that is on the infinity mirror pump design. The only thing is your RGB is going to be controlled completely by what you can do with your motherboard. There is no software or anything like that, so it's very, very lean in terms of what support you need to run something like this. Okay, so now that we've covered all the basics, how does this thing actually perform? Well, just to recap, if you haven't seen one of our AIO reviews, we test the 360mm version of the AIO, and that's because we test on the Core i7-13700K. Now, the reason we use a 360mm AIO is because we know a 360mm AIO can cool a 13700K, and this allows us to show a larger variance in cooling capacity versus just having bad coolers top out at 100 degrees. So if we use like a 240 or in some cases even a 280, we have a great CPU and a great cooler combination to make sure that we can show you variances. The AIO is installed in the same system as all the other AIOs, and that's a Lian Li LanCool 3 with all the fan slots filled with high-end Noctua fans. Yes, you might be saying, why not T30s? Too bad, we already did it with Noctuas. That's what we're gonna use for this. This is to ensure that we are giving the AIO the best possible chance to succeed and give the ability to show just how good the AIO is without taking any other factors into account. So if it's got the perfect airflow, the great airflow case, all that sort of stuff, we're just looking at how good the AIO is. So with all that being said, let's dive into just how good this AIO is at different speeds and how they actually affect it. So let's start off with the default mode, which in this case is performance. We're not gonna test the low end one because it's not really made for cooling. Let's just say if this is any indication of how good advanced is going to be, then awesome. So at idle, against all the other AIOs we've tested to date, this is tied with the current winner, the Asus Ryu 3, which is also an 8th gen Asetek pump, and you can check out the review again right here and also how to install this thing like we showed earlier. So tied for best at idle ain't bad. But what about under load? Well, this is now the best AIO we have tested, coming in at 82 degrees for the 13700K, beating out the entire pack of AIOs, including the previous reigning champion, the EK Nucleus CR360 Lux. So it keeps your PC cool when you're just checking email, browsing the latest PC memes from Robeytech or whatever you're gonna do, all the way up to gaming and even hardcore rendering. But you mentioned gaming, how good are the temps when gaming? Also, this is one of the best in the business there as well, sitting at 52 while under game loads. It's a 3-way tie between this AIO, the Ryu 3, and the EK Nucleus CR360. They're impressive numbers, but what about when you take it up a notch? What about when you pop the fans up to advanced? You're getting 3,000 RPM, 101 CFM, 7+ mmH2O. Well, interesting enough, absolutely nothing. See, the temps were almost the same, except we were like, that can't be right. So what we did is we started to look at the clock speeds of the CPU. Here's the deal. With 13th gen Intel, and even more so with 7000 series Ryzen, these CPUs, if they have more headroom, will take it up automatically. In all cases, we saw higher power usage and clock speeds, which means that the CPU was using the extra headroom to push the processor more. It was about 100 megahertz faster on the idle clocks and the gaming clocks, and about 7 watts more on average under the advanced mode, which is crazy and cool. So yeah, there is more there because of the change in fans, but I'm not sure it's enough to really justify either the noise or maybe in some cases the cost. Now, speaking of noise, let's address this, because to be clear, as nice as these fans are, they are capable of pushing a lot of air. So with this additional performance, are we gonna get a lot more noise? So let's see where this one lands in terms of surround. And again, we're gonna test this just at performance, and we're not gonna test this at advanced, but advanced is actually quite a bit louder, but let's show you performance. Okay, so here we go. So idle is. Holy crap, that's really quiet. Like, that's not what I was expecting at all. That's like 44. That was incredibly quiet. So now we actually have them running at 100% because it was way too good of a cooler to actually get this to ramp up. So these are now at 2000 RPM, and here is what they are at max at 2000 RPM. Guys, I want to be super clear. So for the Deep Cool LS720s, those were 60. For the Ryu 3 underload, those were 57. This is 50. And I'm like getting it close to make it, though that is super quiet for more performance. Like I am genuinely impressed. Now I will tell you that advanced, it's quite a bit louder. So let's go, we're gonna go ahead and set these to advanced just so you guys have the info, and then we'll do that real quick. Okay, so here is, you can already tell quite a bit more noise. This is at advanced. Okay, to be clear, that's actually 4 decibels. That's only 4 decibels louder than even the most powerful, the loudest of the fans from the other 2 AIOs that we've tested volume for, and that's the Ryu and the Deepcool LS720. Now I do want to do one more test. Again, we just want to see what it's like when we're gaming, so we're going to set this up for gaming. Again, I expect this to be dead quiet. Okay, final test. We're back to performance mode. Here is what it sounds like under performance mode when running a benchmark. So we're getting ready to run a Call of Duty benchmark. This is actually just stupid how quiet this is. It's just, I'm waiting for it to run. Okay, as soon as it's in, we'll start because it's not gonna get any louder. Okay, it's running. I mean, to be clear, it is 45, which is right in line with the gaming temperature, a little bit, 1 decibel quieter than both the LS720 and the Ryu 3. So I'm sorry, we did that live and I am reacting to it. Number one, we got this thing started, we had it on a 12900K, and the 12900K, even under Cinebench, couldn't get this to ramp up any higher, so I had to go into the BIOS for both the advanced testing and the performance testing and make sure that the fans were on max so I could get the max noise, because it wasn't hot enough to actually get this thing to ramp up. That is bonkers. Sorry, that's just crazy that had to happen to make it go. So yeah. Sound great, cooling capacity great. Let's wrap it up. So last bit of this review, and I know I was gonna wrap this up, but I do want to talk about value. We wanted to come up with a way to just say how much are you paying for the AI's ability to cool and taking everything extra off the table. So here you're looking at the number that represents that cost to cool a CPU. In this case, it's thermal max minus what it's able to cool it down to, and then you divide that by the cost of the AIO, and that gives you a number. So how much are you paying per degree of cooling? So the smaller the number, obviously the higher the relative value. As a tool, to be clear, this does not take into account all the stuff you can do with RGB and everything else. So if you look at the Phanteks, it's like right in between the Corsair AIOs, which, let's be honest, do a lot more for the money than just cool. So what do I think? I think what we have here is a performance enthusiast AIO that gives you the ability to cool the highest end Intel CPUs and pull the most power out of an AMD CPU, or this high-end AMD CPUs. This is a great cooler for people who are going to do heavy workloads and need that extra oomph from their CPU when they won't get that from lesser performing AIOs. But you are paying for that performance, and surprise, you're also paying for that quiet, which I had no idea how crazy that is. If you're just gaming and you're doing like light workloads, then there are much cheaper options that perform close enough that purchasing an AIO like this I wouldn't say doesn't make a ton of sense. And when you start to compare this against other AIOs that are the same price bracket, but they do way more than just cool. They have like cool animations, and they've got lots of RGB options. And sure, they're not as quiet in some cases, but for the most part, there is more to it than just plugging it on a system and having it cool your AIO. I really do like this AIO. This is an incredible all-in-one cooler. But this is like the Koenigsegg or the Bugatti of AIOs. And you could get 95% of the performance for quite a bit less money. And that's gonna be value that you're gonna have to determine. But in the end, what do you think? What do you think about the fans, specifically the T30s? Would you pay extra money for the extra performance and extra quiet? And do you think that noise is an issue? And how do you deal with the noise in your build? I mean, if you're talking about the advanced mode, I mean, it's quite a bit louder, but geez, it's hard to talk about noise issues with the performance mode. Anyway, I'd love to know your feedback down in the comments below, along with Are you okay with how we did this changes to our AIO review formula? Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button with that like button and ring the notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we post a new video like this here on the Robeytech YouTube. You guys also know we do stuff like put these in actual builds and bench test them live. You should check us out over at youtube.com/Robeytech live. And if YouTube's not your thing, which I don't know how you're watching this right now, but maybe you like to watch live content or Kick on Twitch. You can check that out for sure at kick.com/Robeytech or twitch.tv/Robeytech as well. If you have other questions, we have amazing tech and PC enthusiasts over at discord.gg/Robeytech who love to talk about these very same subjects and love to have enthusiastic discussions about what AIOs are best and what would be best for your build. And you know what? You might make a friend. Anyway, guys, that is it for this content. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Check us out at Robeytech absolutely everywhere. We're all over the internet. Thanks, guys.